Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tear down one of the most common pieces of career advice you'll ever hear. You know the one. It's on posters, it's all over social media, and a well-meaning relative has probably said it to you at some point. Yeah, that quote. And look, on the surface, it sounds amazing. It's kind of a holy grail of careers, right? Waking up every single day genuinely pumped to do something you're passionate about, and you get paid for it? I mean, that's the dream. Or is it? What if I told you that this piece of advice is actually a trap? Seriously, a trap that can lead to you being overworked, underpaid, and just plain miserable. What if the real key to a happy life isn't finding a job you love, but finding a job that lets you live a life you love? So let's unpack how this trap actually works. It all starts with something called the prestige trap. And you see this everywhere in those really exciting aspirational industries. Gaming, fashion, sports, even the big flashy tech companies. They've got this incredible allure, this cool factor that makes people absolutely desperate to get their foot in the door. Here's the deal. These companies know. They know that for every single person who says no thanks to insane hours or a toxic boss, there are 100 other passionate people lined up ready and willing to take their spot. They're literally banking on your dream, and in the process, they turn your own passion into a weapon to use against you. And this is where you see this wild difference in the actual work culture. In these dream jobs, the managers are often true believers, right? They've drunk the Kool-Aid and they believe in the mission so much that it justifies pushing everyone to their absolute limit. But then you look at a so-called boring company. You're way more likely to find a manager who's been there for like 20 years. They see the job for what it is, a job. And they respect your time because, frankly, they want to go home and respect their own. And this isn't just a feeling. It shows up in the paycheck. The numbers really don't lie. I mean, just look at this data from 2018. Established, boring companies like Ford and GM paid their median employee a lot more than a super high-prestige company like Tesla. And why is that? Well, because they can't just run on a cool factor. They actually have to compete with good old-fashioned salary and benefits. Okay, so if the pay is lower and the work conditions are often worse, why do we still fall for these jobs? Why do we chase them so hard? Well, the answer isn't just about making a bad choice. It's actually buried deep in our brain chemistry. There's a powerful biological pull at play here. It really all comes down to one little word: dopamine. You've heard of it? It's that feel-good chemical that your brain releases when you experience something pleasurable. It's the reason you can scroll social media for hours. It's why you crave that piece of chocolate. It's really, really powerful. So think of your brain like a little heat-seeking missile for dopamine. And these exciting industries, they promise an absolute feast of it. There's constant novelty, nonstop stimulation, and that feeling of being part of something big and important. Every new project, every cool company perk, all the industry buzz, it's just a little hit of dopamine again and again. But here's the catch. When you're constantly chasing those massive dopamine spikes, your whole system gets thrown out of whack. Your baseline for what feels rewarding just gets jacked up so high that normal, steady, consistent work starts to feel, well, painfully dull. It's like you're in a state of withdrawal, and your brain starts screaming that the only cure is another big hit of excitement. All right, so we've laid out the trap. Now let's talk about the alternative. Let's build the case for actively, intentionally choosing a boring job. And I know it sounds totally backwards, but stick with me here. Because boring might just be the secret foundation for a truly exciting life. The benefits here aren't some vague promise. They are super tangible. We're talking better pay. We're talking more options because you're not competing with thousands of other dream chasers for one spot. And we're talking about a culture that actually respects that you have a life outside the office. It totally shifts the dynamic. The job stops being your entire identity and becomes what it should be, a transaction. We've all heard that saying, right? People don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And it is so, so true. A good, stable, experienced manager, the kind you are way more likely to find in a stable company, is maybe the single biggest factor in your day-to-day happiness at work. That kind of stability, it's priceless. So how do you actually break free from this trap mentally? It's one thing to understand it in your head, but it's a whole other thing to handle the stress and, let's be honest, the fear that comes with rethinking your whole career path. So let's get into some practical tools you can use. First things first, you have got to completely reframe how you think about rejection. A no from a job is not a personal failure. It is not some grand judgment on your self-worth. It's just data. It's proof that you were brave enough to try, and every single no is just sorting you one step closer to the yes that's actually the right fit. I love this analogy. Think of it like a giant gumball machine. It's a total game changer. When you get a rejection, you're not failing. You just put your quarter in, you crank the wheel, and a red gumball came out. You just look at it and go, nope, not it, and you crank it again. It completely detaches your ego from the outcome. You're not failing, you are simply sorting. Okay, now what about that anxiety you feel when you even think about leaving a cool job for something more stable? That racing heart, that weird feeling in your stomach? Well, guess what? The physical feeling of fear is identical to excitement. The only difference is the story your brain is telling you about it. So when that fear hits, try this little hack. Count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That interrupts the negative story. Then you tell your brain a new one. You say it out loud. I am excited. And if you're in a moment where it all just feels like too much, here are 2 super fast, science-backed ways to get grounded. The physiological sigh, that double inhale through the nose, long exhale through the mouth, is like a built-in reset button for your nervous system. And the grounding exercise pulls you out of that what-if worry spiral by forcing your brain to pay attention to right here, right now. Use these anytime that career anxiety starts to bubble up. Now look, the point of all this isn't to crush your dreams. It's not to tell you to give up on your passions. Not at all. The real goal is to completely redefine what a successful, passion-filled life can actually look like. This is the new way to think about it. Your job doesn't have to be your passion. Your job can be the thing that funds your passion. See the difference? Think of your job as this stable, reliable engine that provides all the resources, the time, the money, and just as important, the mental energy to go build a life you actually want, instead of expecting your job to be your entire life. You know, when you really think about it, this whole approach gives you freedom, stability, and control. And ironically, those are the exact things a dream job often takes away from you in exchange for prestige. So the real question isn't whether you should give up on your dreams. The real question is, what could you build or create or go pursue if your job was simply the stable foundation that made everything else possible? Something to think about.